Many centuries ago, on the American continent, a kingdom of bloodthirsty warriors underwent a miraculous change of heart. They were converted to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Ever after, they refused to take up arms against their attackers. In fact, they buried their weapons deep in the earth. Rather than shed the blood of their brethren, they would give up their own lives. When their attackers saw this, that they would not flee, but would lie down and perish, praising God in the very act, their hearts were touched, and they threw down their weapons. And that day, the people of God were joined by more than 1,000 souls.
Do you intend to keep this book?
I do.
10 days confinement, with the order that you speak no more of this nameless book and its stories.
After the war, I returned to New York City, where I met an old friend who was a pastor of my former church and who knew the history of my troubles. He felt I had been unfairly dealt with, and he began interceding for me with members of the synod. I was finally admitted to the congregation as a lay member. As an experiment, it was agreed that I should accompany my pastor friend on a mission to Australia. In Sydney, we met some Italian immigrants who had serious questions about certain gospel translations in various editions of the Bible. My minister friend was unable to satisfy them and referred them to me.
I understand your concerns. There are errors in translation, but through the grace of God, there are other sources, in addition to the Bible, from which we can learn the words of the Savior.
Other sources?
Verse 16.
And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd.
Who are these other sheep? Shortly after the Savior's resurrection and ascension in the Eastern Hemisphere, he appeared in the Western Hemisphere to the inhabitants of the ancient Americas.
But where have you learned of this?
I have a book which contains the words the Savior preached to these people. He healed their sick, performed miracles, preached his gospel exactly as he had done in Palestine.
This knowledge was sweet for them, but very bitter for my colleague. At first, he bore with me, but I could not resist the strong urge to preach the divine truth. And finally, he denounced me in his report. Again, the synod put in force their previous judgment, and I was forever out of the sect. Soon after, I returned to Italy. In May 1930, while seeking for some information in a French dictionary, I stumbled onto the source of my precious book. I read the words carefully and found that a Mormon church had been established in 1830 and that this church operated a university at Provo, Utah. I quickly wrote to the president of of the university and asked for information about the remainder of the book that talks of Nephi, Alma, and Mosiah. He passed my letter to the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and in another month I heard from President Heber J. Grant. He sent me a copy of the Book of Mormon in Italian and said that he had informed the president of the European missions in Liverpool, England, Elder John A. Widsoe, to arrange baptism. On June 5th, 1932, Elder John A. Widsoe of the Council of the 12 came to Naples intending to baptize me. But the revolution between factions on the island of Sicily caused the police of Palermo to prevent me from going to Naples. And I had to wait for another chance, like Moses, in anticipation of the promised land. I was called to arms during the Italian-Ethiopian War in 1934, and this further prevented anyone with authority from reaching me for baptism. After the war, my name was placed on the mailing list of the Millennial Star, and in 1937 I started correspondence with President Hugh B. Brown of the British Mission. He wrote to me saying that he would be in Rome on a certain day and I could meet him there and be baptized. However, his letter of invitation for me to go to Rome was delayed until the day in which he left for America because of the outbreak of World War II. At that time, all missionaries in Europe returned to America. Thus, I was deprived of baptism and cut off from any news of the church. I remained a faithful follower and fervent preacher of the gospel of this dispensation. I had the copies of the standard works, and I translated chapters into Italian and sent them to persons of my acquaintance. Dear Elder Widsoe, my purpose in writing is to ask you to please help me to be baptized soon. My greatest desire is to receive this essential ordinance from an authorized servant of God.
Che c'è, Giovanni?
C'è una lista dall'America.
Aspetta, aspetta.
Ti saluto, me ne vai.
Grazie, Giovanni.
Elder Widsoe answered, saying that he had asked President Samuel E. Bringhurst of the Swiss-Austrian Mission to come down to Sicily and baptize me.